And welcome back to The Loop, a bold and fresh look at our lives here in Kenya. My name is Mike Washira, and we're looking at what are the top stories making headlines so far. To sports, Manchester United will be looking forward to correcting their inconsistent run in the English Premier League as they travel to London Stadium on Saturday to face West Ham United. The Red Devils are 9th on the EPL standings with 16 points, while West Ham United are 5th with 17 points after 10 matches. The match will be live on K24 TV as from 8:30 p.m. tomorrow.
Marcus has been training this morning, not fully, but he's joined in with the group. So he obviously, his shoulder stopped him finishing the game. So he's getting treatment, and hopefully he'll be part of the squad that travels. So he's having treatment now after training. You know, football is a game with human beings, and they live their own lives. We played against some fantastic teams. Go 30 games back or 40 games back, I think we're one of the most consistent teams performance-wise in the Premier League. So of course you're disappointed when you lose a game. I thought we played really well on Wednesday. So and it's fine margins at times that decide a game if you win or you lose. So the PSG game, the performance was miles better than, say, West Brom, for example. But you win against West Brom, but you don't get 3 points against PSG. So I think we're getting more and more less bad performances, getting more and more consistent. Results you can never control the result in the end. That's decided by fine margins.
Welcome back to The Loop, a bold and fresh look at our lives here today. And today we are talking about the issue of intimate partner violence. It is a huge issue, especially now during the time of COVID. And during this time of the pandemic, we've noted, the increases in these sorts of cases. And the question that we're asking is, domestic or intimate partner violence, should I stay or should I go? Again, the question is, domestic and intimate partner violence, should I stay or should I go? We know so many people are going through this issue but silently suffering where they are and find it very difficult to break away from the cycle of violence. So what are some of the solutions that are available to survivors who are going through these kinds of situations? Where can they go? Who can they talk to? And what are the resources available to them? We have an exciting panel of guests, and we're joined by our first guest here, who is Angelina Sikanda, who is a gender expert, but she's also in charge of strategic partnerships at the Center for Rights Education and Awareness. Karibu sana, Angie.
And you were a guest on our first show, yes. So welcome back.
Thank you.
Thanks for keeping the faith with The Loop.
Thank you. You're doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
So I think our first question is just how widespread is this problem? We've been talking about domestic violence. It's been called the shadow pandemic this year. How widespread is it?
Intimate partner violence is very widespread. In fact, it makes about 64% of all the domestic violence cases that you talk about. It's all about people in the relationship, it's about partners, and how they're managing the relationship in that particular instance. And so the struggles of managing intimate relationships, it manifests itself in violence.
So, because when we say domestic violence, it also includes children. Intimate partner violence 64%?
Intimate partner violence, we're talking about the partners in a relationship.
Yes.
It's an intimate relationship. It could be dating, could be cohabiting, could be married couples. Yeah.
Okay.
So all that is intimate partner violence because it's about people in a romantic relationship
Okay.
engaging in violence as a result of challenges in their relationship.
Can you give us some examples of what that violence is? Because sometimes you're not always sure. If you're punched across the face, it's clear. But sometimes you're not always sure. Am I a victim of violence?
Well, it takes very many forms. Sometimes it's about abuse. It's about name calling. It's about titles you get that you're uncomfortable with. It's also about sex texting that happens in relationships. It's also about how you're treated and valued as an individual. So in that, by your partner. And where you feel uncomfortable, you feel it's demeaning, it's belittling. We have people who've lost identity as a result of the violence experience. Where you go to a house and people ask, Mama Nani anaitwa nani? Everybody forgot you exist.
Yes.
It's like you have no name anymore.
Yes.
And so people are like, wait a minute, you have a name, you have an identity.
Yes.
It takes the form of you're going out and someone is making comments derogative about your dressing, about how you look, about whether to be seen with you. And, you know, what title do you call yourself? Are you Mrs.? Are you Miss? Do you use your husband's name or not? So sometimes people don't even realize that this is wrong because when they're asked, who's this? How do you respond? How do you introduce your partner to your friends? How are you seen out there as a couple? Or what's your title?
Yeah.
I love
In social media, people ask about status. So what's your status?
Yes,
So
relationship status. It's
it
complicated.
begins from there. So sometimes we may not realize it. So the punch is the one we see most obviously. It also takes about, there are those who have what you call silent treatment.
Yes.
So we look at each other and you assume I know what is in your mind. We don't communicate. You communicate through children. So they're the ones who engage in the relationship as opposed to us who are the adults in the relationship.
Who are the adults.
Yeah.
You've brought up a very deep part, which is the emotional aspect of this violence. And we'll be joined in just a few minutes by Maggie Gitu, who is a family therapist. And before that, of course, we want to hear from you. What do you think on this issue? Domestic violence, should I stay or should I go? Our WhatsApp number is on your screen. And we, of course, can't wait to hear what you have to say. We're on Twitter, we are on Instagram, and we are also on Facebook. And we'll be right back in just a few minutes.
Okay.
It's a Gender-based violence, should I stay or should I go? That's our question tonight. And specifically when it comes to intimate partner violence, welcome, Maggie, again a repeat guest. You drank the Loop Kool-Aid and you're back.
We love you, we love you.
We love you guys too. So you're a family therapist.
Yes.
She very quickly touched on the different forms that this violence takes.
Yes.
Even something as basic as who am I to this person? Am I just some dude she knows? Am I the cab guy? Am I the husband? You know? What other forms does it take?
I'm really glad you asked that question because when we hear violence or intimate partner violence, we think of hitting or slapping. But it can be physical, it can be emotional, it can be psychological, financial, verbal, sexual. I mean, basically in any way that people connect, partners connect, lovers connect, there is a chance for violation. That's what violence is.
Oh, I like that. There's a chance for violation.
Yeah, and so, I mean, if there's that chance, you would think then that, you know, as people go into these relationships, that they would be armed with the knowledge and the tools and the ability to be able to resolve some of the drivers of this violence. And so, one, what would you say some of the drivers are of the violence, but then what are some of the things that people can do to resolve, you know, like, for example, conflict that could lead to that kind of violence?
Yeah, I kind of smiled when you said you would think people would know. On the outside, you do think, you don't know you're getting hit. What are you doing there? But there, you know, relationships are more emotional connections and our cognitive functioning is not, honestly, at its highest. I'm not even trying to be funny, but when somebody is in love, you can't tell them anything and they believe you.
So logic sort of is thrown out the window,
Logic,
and it's more emotional and that sort of connection.
Yeah, because love feels good, and people who violate us very often also show us love, very often are charming, very often are kind, very often are generous, right? This is a part of them. It's not all of them, it's a part of them. The thing for you to know is, first of all, one of your questions is, what are some of the things that can cause this? Some things predispose all of us to behaving in a way that is counter to our nature. Although I will say some people do seem to be kind of, that is their nature, to violate, to take, to not care about the other. And you will hear even words like narcissistic, etc. But things like poverty, so if you want to look at from a systemic lens, poverty is one of the great things that can predispose somebody to violence. I'm not trying to imply that the poor are more violent. What I'm saying is that when you can't manage food, shelter, and clothing, your resilience feels tested to the point where it's not functioning at capacity. That's how I would phrase that.
Do we also see socialization specifically with regard to men about their position of power and authority in a homestead being an issue that comes into play in relationships? Because you would find, like, for example, men are socialized to believe that we are the provider, protector, and the manager of resources. Now, in this day and age where women are very empowered and are the ones who are playing that role, you find that there's a sort of crisis of masculinity where some men may feel that, you know, these roles and responsibilities have been taken from me by my partner, and now I am left without any role to play. Can that also be a situation that can bring around tension and violence in the home?
100% yes. 100%
if I'm to pick from how people engage, how do you get into an intimate relationship? It is based on your history and where you come from. So one of the things that people don't usually do, and which could be a way of avoiding getting into violent relationship, would be how much time do you take to know the person you're engaging together with? How much time do you take to understand their concept, for example, of conflict and how to resolve conflict? Because you meet somebody, they've had a different understanding of how to deal with conflict, and now you're forming a relationship and your concepts are totally different. For this person, they were brought up in an environment whereby they were told if somebody hurts you, you hit back. And so if they're in a violent relationship or something happens, a conflict erupts, like right now with COVID, then that's the way they react, because that's the way they know how to deal with conflict. Then you have another person who has been in a relationship where they know from their history, they are known, if you're uncomfortable about something, if you're unhappy, speak out. And so they are looking for an opportunity or a partner who they can talk to. But the partner they are talking to doesn't know how to do that, because where they're coming from, their background is such that we don't have this kind of a conversation. So if it's a man who's been socialized to understand, I am the man, I provide the food, I provide the rent, so now there's COVID, there's no more money, and the person with money in the house is the partner. So the partner is paying all the bills, and so how do they continue to live together and say we are together, yet you don't provide because you feel that's the role you're supposed to play because of socialization? That's a crisis that we have.
Yes. I like what you're bringing up, and let me just, because I know we've had this conversation, but there's something that CREW is doing, Center for Rights Education and Awareness, around the issue of engaging communities about how to communicate better as intimate partners and how to be able to resolve some of this conflict. And I believe it's called the SASA approach. Yes. If you could just please tell us what that is.
Yes, the SASA approach is a model that we're using which has been tried and tested in Uganda. And one of the things we realize is that we have a problem with how we communicate in intimate relationships. So how do we build capacity at this point in time when we are all adults and engaging in a relationship? How do you have this conversation without taking away your role as the man of the household, your role as a woman of the household? So having that open conversation where we're enabling couples in relationship, or people, in an intimate relationship, to learn how to converse together freely, openly, and talk about what they would expect so that they can reach a happy medium where violence is not an option. So that you understand your partner doesn't like, for example, to be shouted at because the environment where they come from, that is something that would make them, affects their self-esteem. So you know what your partner likes. You understand how they like to be treated. You also understand where your partner and how they want to be treated. Then find a happy medium where violence is not an option. So open conversations between intimate partners where they're together as a team, as a family.
How is the uptake, especially by the men? Because for, like Mike was pointing out, a lot of men are taught, mimi ndio mwanaume, you can't ask me questions, I'm not to be, nimesema.
Yeah, like I'm the law, right?
I'm the law. Once I've put down the law, you don't revisit.
Yes.
So,
well, it's pretty
what's
easy.
the uptake?
The uptake has been very good, by the way.
Okay.
Men are very excited to engage because most of them are saying, listen, I go to a house where I get in and the first thing people do is give me food. They've not even asked for it. And so now you're telling them, let's put all these things aside. Here's an opportunity for you to sit with your partner and just talk. How do you feel? And it's simple things. It's not the way, you know, people go out there and you're like, oh, the men are horrible, the men have done this. No, just have a conversation with your partner outside of your household and just have that question of, are you happy? How do you feel about your relationship? What things would you like to do differently?
Okay.
Do you like the way we deal with our children?
Yeah.
What are your aspirations? What are your dreams? Just have that conversation away from your children, away from your household. Right now with COVID, how else do you think we can improve our situation? What are the other things that you wish to do? What are these ideas you have that you never get an opportunity to discuss when you're in the home because there's so much responsibility to work through?
So you're
realize
pushing
that
couples to not
link
leave
together,
the home,
conversation,
but
but
have
just
your own
away,
date
have your
time, have your
space.
own one-on-one time as a couple.
Yes.
And I would suggest that,
Yes?
you know how earlier you were saying men have these roles and responsibilities, and what she's describing is really a relationship. And men have the opportunity to trade in. It's not to replace, but to prioritize their humanity, to say what she's talking about. How was your day? How are you? You, the person, not you, the man, you, the provider, you, the father. All those are titles, right? All those are titles.
Yes.
Right.
I mean, all of us underneath these clothes and titles and work and whatever, we're all just human beings. So if as a society, socially, we can begin to socialize our sons, our husbands, our partners, but also our women. Because part of what holds up violence is the female voice that says, oh, I'm supposed to just be duty bound.
Yes.
You haven't even asked him how his day was. You haven't even asked him how he's feeling or why he's looking extra tired today. Because he might tell you the tire blew on the car. That's a point of relating as people. So trade in role and responsibility and prioritize relationship.
But let's not also forget that Crew, actually, Mike, one of the first times we engaged on air, I was on radio at the time, I was a radio presenter, and we're talking about research that Crew had done showing a clear correlation between dowry and domestic violence, where very many Kenyan men, and even women, you know, the dowry was paid, I belong to this person, she belongs to me, I can do what I want with her. So women are seen as property. So how are you addressing that, like with this SASA project?
One of the things we're looking at is the issue of dowry has been commercialized, unfortunately, and that's why we get that kind of a feeling. But if you look at the sense of why were you paying dowry for this person? Were you purchasing property or are you looking for a companion? So what we do with the SASA model is that we bring the guard down to say, I was looking for a companion. So let's build this companionship together. So leave alone for us to sit together, then there are some rules of engagement. And dowry is one of them, where you appreciate your spouse and where they're coming from. And the fact that from this point henceforth you're saying, then I will do the responsibilities that these people were doing for her. So if you take it as an appreciation, nobody has an issue with dowry. So you're saying, I haven't bought you. No, I want a companion. So let's build this companionship. What should it look like? What are the things you like? What are the things you don't like?
Really?
Well, how do we improve this relationship? Do you like the way I dress? If not, what is it about it? Let's have a conversation around it. And when you do that and they're doing it together as a couple, they bring their guard down and they start enjoying the relationship. Where they do the fun things that made them get together. And you remember how they met, what attracted them to each other. And those are the things that
the guy was sexy,
on.
he wasn't a husband.
Right.
Now build on
He
that.
wasn't like this title.
He wasn't a husband and she wasn't a wife or mama watoto.
Yes,
The
yes. So
thing
you build
about
on
belonging, the thing about belonging I was going to say too is that many things belong to us. This show belongs to you too. But it does not mean now I can do anything I want. Do you know what I mean? That last part you added on your own.
Oh.
Belonging is about, it's a gift.
Yeah.
This belongs to me. So I care for it, I store it well, I wear it when I'm going on the loop, right? Because there's an element of care when I look at belonging in that way.
Right.
When you guys said you guys are repeat guests, and we said we love you guys.
Yes.
Yes,
We
do.
feel like we belong. So when we show up on time.
Right.
We want to be respectful.
Yeah.
Belonging is not this shoe is mine, so I'll just
Yeah.
go scuff it anywhere on the road.
Right. And-
Belonging has
yeah.
an element of care.
I like that. I like that. And of course, as we speak with Maggie and Angelina here, one of the things that we're going to be discussing is when you find yourself in a situation like this, you might be in this situation watching right now, wondering what are some of the resources and support available to me? Where can I go? Who can I talk to? What can I do to break away from this cycle of violence? And who is there to support me? We'll talk about that and so much more when we come back. Remember, you're watching The Loop, and don't go too far. There's still more to come.